all those Valentine's book recommendations talking about cozy romance books with happy ending? Well, this video will not be like that. Hello, amazing humans on the net. As we are 1 week away from Valentine's Day, today I thought I would recommend you some books about love. Appropriately, I am wearing this pink fluffy jumper for the occasion, but I need to warn you, the books I'll be talking about today are not necessarily fluffy. I do have for you a mix of some classics and some contemporary novels, as well as some short stories, all of which explore the theme of love, but maybe not in that kind of fairy tale happily ever after sense. Instead, these stories delve into love with all its complexities, nuances, and even some darker shades too. So, we start with classics, and number one on my list is my favorite author, Gabriel Garcia Marques, and his novel Love in the Time of Cholera. It is difficult to discuss this book without spoilers, but in essence, it follows two young people who meet and appear in love until the woman rejects the man's marriage proposal. And then over the next 50 years, we witness what he does with this love that he refuses to give up. All of this unfolds against the backdrop of a contagious disease that sweeps Colombia, which is where this novel is set. And this contagious disease, one could argue, could be a metaphor for love, which, like illness, can become incurable and destructive. As always with Marques, there is far more in this book than meets the eye. It's one of those novels that will resonate differently depending on what life experiences you have as a reader. And I know you can probably say that about all books, but with this one in particular, we have themes of death and other heavy subjects, of which Marques talks about in this plain manner, in this almost casual way. Not a plain style, but in a plain manner, if that makes sense. And we left wondering, is it love or is it in fact unhealthy infatuation or even obsession? We may not always like or understand the main character, but like with all of Marques's works, it's about going on a journey. It's a journey that is absolutely beautifully written and one that will stay with you even after you finish the book. Next, we have the one and only Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is a love story, but it's not a love story that you would normally expect. This is a story of love so intense and all-consuming that the two central characters feel almost like one transcendent spiritual entity. I believe Emily Bronte was one of the first, if not the first, to create in Heathcliff the archetype of this dark, brooding, and deeply damaged male protagonist who is possessive and sometimes can also be violent, but somehow we can't help but be drawn to him. I mean, if you think about popular culture today, I'm thinking, for example, Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey. You know, these men who are wounded, tormented, and at the same time deeply magnetic. They all just different versions of Heathcliff. Do let me know if you are aware of a book that predates Wuthering Heights that has already this kind of male protagonist. I would love to know. But let me be clear about this book. This read is not for everyone. It has cruelty, it has obsession, it has shocking twists, which basically make it anything but what you would expect from a traditional romance. But in my opinion, it is absolutely worth reading as long as you're prepared for a bit of a wild and deeply emotional ride. Next, we have a modern classic set in what was once Czechoslovakia, and while love isn't really central theme of this novel, it does serve as a sort of major lens through which the writer explores deeper existential questions. The book I'm talking about is The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. We have this photographer, Teresa, who is in love with a surgeon called Thomas, and Thomas loves Teresa also, but in his own way, because he is obsessed with preserving his personal freedom, his lightness of being. He refuses to be weighed down by any attachments and emotional involvement. And he engages in numerous affairs, including one with Sabina, who is the third character in the triangle. She's this free-spirited artist. And so through these entangled relationships, the novel examines not just love, but also fate and freedom, and whether our choices and decisions have any significance whatsoever, and also whether our actions carry any meaning. So yes, if you fancy something with a high dose of reflections on our existence and human condition, then this will be the book for you. Number 4 on my list is the book that I mentioned in my classics TBR video, and that is The Dame of the Camellias, or The Lady of the Camellias as it is sometimes translated. This is a book by Alexandre Dumas, and this book holds a very special place in my heart because this was probably one of the first classics. Sorry, no, it is the first classic I have ever read on my own initiative. I borrowed it from a local library at the age of 11 and I absolutely loved it. I remember the plot to this day. For some reason, this novel isn't talked about as much as it deserves, despite being one of the most gorgeous and most tragic love stories ever written. And I didn't realize it until recently, but apparently this book was the inspiration behind the film Moulin Rouge, the one with Nicole Kidman, and also behind the opera La Traviata. This is a heartbreaking tale of Parisian courtesan and a young man who falls deeply in love with her. In case you don't know, courtesan is basically a prostitute with a more wealthy upper class clientele. And the title, The Lady of the Camellias, comes from the fact that the main protagonist, the way she signals to her client whether she's open to business is by carrying flowers which are camellias, and on days that she's menstruating they are red, so therefore signaling she's closed for business. And on the other hand, when she's carrying white camellias, she's signaling that she can see clients that night. And so we have this young man, he falls deeply in love with her, she loves him back, but of course the passion is doomed because of all the societal expectations. And actually this is a story about sacrifice and about selfless love, 100% selfless love. We have a very devastating conclusion in this book, and I would say this novel is extremely emotionally charged and really captures this bitter but also sweet aspects of love, because it captures its beauty and selflessness, but also sacrifice that it sometimes requires. So, if these are the themes you like to reach for, then go for this book. Okay, let's lighten the mood a little bit. We've got Pride and Prejudice as the next classic on my list, and this is probably the fluffiest love story on my list. We have this wonderfully told transition from enemies to lovers. This is a book you read almost in one go because you really become friends with all of the characters. I also love it for the fact that it still to this day makes us reflect on judgments we hold, because we have this central conflict of Elizabeth initially disliking Darcy due to his perceived snobbery, while Darcy misjudges Elizabeth based on her social status. I need to tell you, I am a late bloomer when it comes to Jane Austen. I've only just discovered this in December, and I am planning to read all of her books, but I have been getting myself into this deep hole of digging out all the information about Jane Austen. I find her absolutely fascinating, and I discovered that the house where she lived later in her life is actually just 15 minutes drive from my house, so I will definitely go and visit it. Do let me know if you would like me to film it for you, maybe when the weather gets warmer. I think that would be a fun trip. Anyway, going back to Pride and Prejudice, if you are a fan of enemies to lovers kind of books, This is a classic enemies to lovers novel, and you have got to read it. And for the final classic, I have a book that totally surprised me in how much I liked it. This little novella is a gothic horror story, a genre I don't typically reach for, and I have just finished listening to it on Audible. It is free, so go check it out. It is fantastically done in a way of a drama almost, and I think it's only 2.5 hour listen. But the book I'm talking about is Carmilla by Sheridan Fanu. If you haven't heard of it, let me give you some context. This novel was written about 25 years before Dracula was written, and both books were written by Irish authors who actually knew each other, so there is for sure influence of one book on another. But what captivated me most is how different this book feels from the vampire stories we used to. The two main characters are both women, one mysterious and enigmatic, and the other a seemingly ordinary innocent girl. A random event brings them together, they basically meet, and they develop this deep, intense bond, one that goes deeper than friendship. Meanwhile, in the background, we find out that these strange and unsettling things started to happen in the village. Let me tell you something. This book is extremely erotic, but not in a crude way. Maybe sensual is a better word for it. There is this undeniable, unspoken pull between these two women. And the fact that this was written 200 years ago, it is just mind-blowing. For such a short novel, this really packs a punch. Also, it did really help that when I was listening to it, it was usually in early evenings, late afternoons, as I was walking my dog in dark woods. So the atmosphere was perfect for listening to this book. And I just can't believe why Carmilla is not as well known as Dracula. Has there even been one adaptation of the book? I mean, we've seen countless adaptations of Dracula. Maybe there was. Please do let me know. I haven't checked that out yet. But the only answer I can come up with is that I guess with Dracula, you've got all these universally popular elements. You've got this villain, you've got a group of people trying to defeat this common enemy. All of that, I guess, translates very well onto the screen. Whereas Carmilla is not like that. Carmilla is more subtle. And I guess the other obvious reason is that when the book was written, it wasn't very common to be writing about lesbian love, which is, I guess, much more acceptable now. So we have about 200 years of making up to do. Well, if there is a movie based on this book, or there will be a movie, I am definitely watching it. Okay, we're moving on to contemporary fiction now. And the first on the list is The Bronze Horseman by Paullina Simmons. This is an utterly captivating historical romance, or rather an epic love story, I would say, set in Russia in 1941, so just before the siege of Leningrad. And our main protagonist is Tatiana. She's 17 years old. She meets this strikingly handsome officer in the Red Army called Alexandre. And from the first moment when they lay their eyes on each other, they have this intense and undeniable attraction to each other. But of course, nothing in love is that simple. The timing is completely against them. The siege of Leningrad is just about to begin, and as the city is cut off from the world, its people endure starvation, freezing temperatures, and all the other horrors of war, all of which, by the way, are quite graphically described. So if you're expecting here something similar to Gentlemen in Moscow, where historical aspects are presented through a bit of a rose-tinted glasses, this book is not like that, okay? So maybe it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's all very important to portray it like that, because the whole point is that despite all of the horrors of the war, the love between Tatiana and Alexandre somehow endures. This is not an easy read. It's raw, it's heartbreaking, it's deeply immersive. And, through Tatiana's eyes, we experience all the difficulties that she is seeing and experiencing. But at its core, it's also a story of hope and the kind of love that defies fate itself. This book is for someone who is looking for a novel that will completely consume them. Now let's switch it up again and talk about a little bit lighter and funny novel. And the book I want to talk about is titled The Man Who Forgot His Wife by John O'Farrell. This is set in modern times, and the story follows a man who quite literally forgets who he is one day. We don't get a scientific explanation on how, why that happened. That's not really the point of the story. It's more about exploration of relationships, marriage, and self-identity. So we have this main character, Vaughn, who has lost all memory of his past, and as he pieces his life together, he struggles to understand why he lost passion for his job, why he fell out of love for his wife, and why effectively his marriage is falling apart. And the irony there is that as he meets with this woman who is his wife, whom he's forgotten, he is totally drawn to her and he falls in love with her all over again. And what he doesn't remember, of course, is all the years of mistakes and neglect that led to the breakdown of the relationship in the first place. John O'Farrell's writing is very sharp and witty, and sometimes you almost feel like you're reading a stand-up comedy. But despite this being quite an entertaining novel to read, don't be fooled, because there is a very poignant reflection on love in there. There's also reflection on marriage and on any relationships and the effort that it takes to look after them. My husband loves this author and he's read a few books by him. If there are any men watching this video, let me know if you've read John O'Farrell. And if you haven't, I would highly recommend you grab one of his books. The other one that is quite funny as well is The Best Men Can Get. So yeah, one of those two would be a good recommendation. Let me know what you think. At number 9, we have The Time Traveler's Wife. This is a deeply beloved and hopelessly romantic story about two people who are destined for each other from very early age. But they face this extraordinary challenge because the man is a time traveler. I am sure you will have either read or at least heard of this book, or if not, then you probably have watched the movie, which I think it's a great adaptation of the book in my opinion. And I think what makes it so compelling is that it weaves into it not just love, but also elements of science fiction and lots of suspense and fate. So we have this unique blend of a little bit of everything, which potentially could turn out to be chaotic, but it's not. It is executed seamlessly and you will be totally engrossed in this book. So if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. For number 10, I couldn't resist including a psychological thriller in this mix, and the perfect choice for that category, in my opinion, is Nicci French's book titled Killing Me Softly. This is a story of an instant, all-consuming attraction. Think the movie 9.5 Weeks, but with a dramatic twist. The main protagonist, Alice, is an ordinary woman living a regular life with a steady job and a steady boyfriend, but one day she crosses the street in London and her gaze meets a gaze of this mysterious man, and just like that, she is absolutely captivated. He is clearly drawn to her as well, and before she knows it, they are developing this intense, passionate affair that really escalates with terrifying speed. As you might expect from a psychological thriller, there is a twist in this story, and the real magic here lies in that mix of suspense and passionate romance, with passionate romance being the center of the book, around which the suspense is built. Killing Me Softly is one of the earlier works by Nicci French, who are a duo. It's a couple, husband and wife, writing books together. And all of their earlier books are absolutely fantastic psychological thrillers. But for Valentine's, I would recommend this one because it centers around passionate affair. Definitely worth reading. You won't be disappointed. But actually, just a quick word of warning. Please do not watch the TV adaptation of the book, which is definitely available here in the UK. I'm not sure about outside the UK, but it's one of those adaptations where they changed the plot and especially the ending, which I really don't understand why they do that. Anyway, don't watch it. Do yourself a favor and grab this book. Number 11 on my list is Green Dot by Madeleine Gray. I've talked about it in my previous video, which I will link above, but here's a quick rundown. It is set in Sydney, Australia. We follow a young woman who is fresh out of university. She lands her first job in an office setting, and there she embarks on this affair with a married man. While as a reader, you can totally see where this is going, and you will find yourself getting frustrated with some of the choices that the main protagonist makes. Somehow, this story will still grip you from start to finish, and I think that's because of its superb writing, which is very witty, very sharp. This is the author's debut novel, and let me tell you, I will be looking out for what she produces next. It's a page turner, and it has an emotional punch to it, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants to read a superbly written coming-of-age novel that is also smart and engaging. And for the final contemporary novel, number 12, we have a book here that I just couldn't not mention in this list, and that is The Paper Palace. Again, I mentioned this book in my video on books to be read in one sitting. I'll link it up below or above. In case you haven't read it yet, the main character, Elle, is married. She's got 3 kids. She's in her 50s. And as she visits her childhood holiday home by a lake, she has to make a certain decision. And so she looks back on her life. The story is told from 2 timelines. One is over the last 24 hours, and the other one is over the span of the last 50 years. And as she looks back on her life, we slowly finding out about different events that led her to this very moment. And eventually we are also able to understand why she has to make the decision she's about to make, and then eventually why she makes the decision that she makes. I hadn't realized until recently when I looked at people's reviews of this book how divisive this book is, because it seems that some people hate it and some people absolutely love it. I'm in the latter category, of course. And I think the reason why people may not like it is because this is the kind of story that gives an honest and at times extremely brutal view of life where, you know, things get difficult, not everything goes smoothly. If you don't shy away from that sort of approach, and if you're not put off by sometimes very honest descriptions of harshness of life, then I would say definitely read this book. And finally, I would love to recommend to you a couple of short stories collection. The first one is Things We Do Not Tell the People We Love by Huma Qureshi. I mentioned this author in my December wrap-up video because I read her novel titled Playing Games. And yes, I couldn't help myself. In January, I loved her writing so much that I went and sought out this short story collection. And these are the only 2 books she so far produced, but I think I'll probably read anything she writes. This is a great short story collection, as the title suggests, centered around love, but different type of love. So we've got different pieces of work here. We've got, for example, Premonition. This one is on teenage love. Then we've got Sama, which is about a relationship between a daughter and a mother. Firecracker is about a friendship between 2 girls. The Jam Maker is about love between a daughter and a father. Superstitious this is my favorite. You've got a bit of a fable in there, and it's a reflection on grief and loss, guilt. It's beautiful. Then you also have Foreign Parts, which is about a husband and a wife and how they perceive each other in different settings. And three more: Waterlogged, Small Differences, and The Wishes. What you get here is so much information and so much meaning behind these just snippets of various moments that you are witness to, these various conversations. Because like with any short stories, you only have a very limited window you can present to a reader, which is why I think it's so difficult to deliver a good short story, because you have to pack in a lot and very carefully pick every single word, because you have limited amounts of words to use to communicate all the nuances you want to communicate as a writer. Anyway, that's how I always think of short stories, and so Huma Qureshi does it extremely well. Now, the only thing I would say is, as with most short stories, don't expect a very definite conclusion and resolution in each of these stories. Some of them are open-ended. Oh, and one other thing, some of them are quite dark as well. Not all of them, but there's one in particular about the mother and the daughter where the ending is quite drastic. So there you go. You've been warned. Next one I want to mention in this video is Black Vodka short story collection by Deborah Levy. I already talked about it in my December reading wrap-up video, so I won't dwell on it too much. This is a fantastic writing, great short story collection, and it is mainly centered around the theme of love. My favorite story is Black Vodka, and there's another one titled Placing a Call, which is about love lost. Please do check it out. I don't think it's that well known or much talked about here on YouTube, but I really enjoyed it. Now, I do want to end on a positive note, so I dug out this very old short story that most of you will probably have heard of, but I haven't until recently when I discovered a free version of it on Audible. It is The Gift of Magi, or Maggie as we say it here in the UK, by O. Henry. This is about a young married couple, Jim and Della, who struggle to afford Christmas gifts for each other. And this is a very cute little story about unselfish love with a bit of irony thrown into it. That's it for today. I hope you will find some inspiration. I want to wish you all the best and lots of love, whether you celebrate Valentine's Day or not, whether you're single or in a relationship. All the best to you, and I will see you next week as always.